is 1880. The place is London, England. The victim is a wealthy banker named Mr. William Smith. He was found dead in his study, his throat slit from ear to ear. The police are called to the scene, and they quickly determine that the murder was premeditated. There were no signs of a struggle, and Mr. Smith was killed with a single blow. The police assign the case to Detective Inspector John Smith, a veteran investigator with a reputation for solving even the most difficult cases. Detective Smith begins his investigation by interviewing Mr. Smith's family and friends. He learns that Mr. Smith was a successful businessman with no known enemies. He was also a generous philanthropist who was well liked by everyone who knew him. Detective Smith then turns his attention to the crime scene. He carefully examines the study, looking for any clues that might lead him to the killer. He finds a bloody knife on the floor, but the knife has no fingerprints on it. Detective Smith also interviews the servants, but they can provide no useful information. They all say that they saw nothing suspicious on the night of the murder. Detective Smith is stumped. He has no suspects and no leads. He is about to give up when he has a breakthrough. He remembers that Mr. Smith was recently involved in a business deal that went sour. The other party in the deal was a man named Mr. James Jones. Detective Smith decides to pay Mr. Jones a visit. He finds Mr. Jones at his office, and he asks him about his relationship with Mr. Smith. Mr. Jones is evasive at first, but Detective Smith eventually wears him down. Mr. Jones admits that he and Mr. Smith had a falling out over the business deal. He also admits that he was angry at Mr. Smith, but he denies killing him. Detective Smith is not convinced. He believes that Mr. Jones is lying. He decides to follow Mr. Jones. Detective Smith follows Mr. Jones for several days. He eventually sees Mr. Jones meeting with a man in a dark alley. The man is wearing a hat and a coat, so Detective Smith cannot get a good look at his face. Detective Smith follows the man, but he loses him in the crowd. He is about to give up when he sees the man again. The man is getting into a carriage. Detective Smith quickly hails a cab and follows the carriage. The carriage stops in front of a small house in a seedy part of town. Detective Smith gets out of his cab and follows the man into the house. Detective Smith sneaks up to the house and peers through the window. He sees the man sitting at a table with a group of men. The men are talking about the murder of Mr. Smith. They are laughing and joking about it. Detective Smith is shocked. He realizes that he has found the killers. He bursts into the house and arrests the man. They are all charged with the murder of Mr. Smith. The men are eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Detective Smith is hailed as a hero for solving the case.